Now we will talk about cytoskeleton. It's a group of fibrous proteins that provide structural support for cells. What does it mean? Fibrous proteins are proteins made of long protein chains, usually twisted together. And structural support for cells, it means keeping the cell in place, keeping the cell shape, and keeping organelles inside of that cell in their proper place. So cytoskeleton also helps in cell reproduction and in transportation of substances within the cell. There are three types of cytoskeleton structures: microtubules, microfilaments, and intermediate filaments. Microtubules is just a chain of amino acids twisted into the spiral, like a tiny tubule. And those microtubules help to maintain cell shape and structure by resisting compression of the cell, and also helps in positioning the organelles within the cell, keeping them in place. What about compression of the cell? Let's say you press on your hand or on your arm, and will you kill yourself by doing that? No, because inside of the cell there will be microtubules resisting that compression. Next one, microfilaments. Microfilaments are tiny filaments made of two twisted chains of amino acids. And usually they take part in muscle contraction and cell division, and most well known of them would be actin. That's what we have in our muscles. Finally, intermediate filaments. Those are several or even many of amino acid chains twisted together. It's a strong structure inside of the cell that resists tension, the force that pull apart cells. Example, when you're doing stretch exercises, you are stretching your cells, but they return to their original shape and they are not torn apart usually because of those intermediate filaments. Many cells, not all but many, have extensions going out from them, out of the cell. Those cellular extensions are cilia and flagella, and both of them contain microtubules inside of them, but they are different in numbers and in size. Cilia move substances across cell membrane. Cilia are numeral and they are relatively small. What does it mean, move substances? For example, cells inside of our trachea have cilia, and those cilia move mucus through our trachea. Only one cell of the human body, sperm cell, has flagella, like a long tail of the sperm cell that helps to propel the whole cell. Another cellular extension would be microvilli. How microvilli are different from cilia? They do not have any microtubules inside of them. They look pretty much like those fingers in a glove. Imagine a surgical rubber glove. Those fingers empty inside, they just increase the surface of the cell. Usually used for absorption of substances, so many cells inside of the small intestine have those microvilli. Centrosome. It's like a cell center sitting next to the nucleus, and it is made of two centrioles. Each centriole is made of several microtubules, and usually centrosome is not used. It only takes part in the cellular division or mitosis. Now we will talk about nucleus. Nucleus is a center of the cell. It's like a brain of the cell that has all the information about how to make proteins, or genetic library. Our DNA molecules are located inside of the cell nucleus. So a nucleus responds to signals it receives from other organs like signals, electrical signals through the nervous system or hormones, and dictates kinds and amounts of proteins to be produced. Most cells have only one nucleus, and they are called uninucleate. Red blood cells do not have any nucleus, and they are called anucleate. Some cells, like skeletal muscle cells, bone destruction cells, are multinucleate because they have several nuclei. That is a general structure of the nucleus. Right here is a double nuclear envelope, like a membrane surrounding the nucleus, and it has many openings in it that are called nuclear pores. Then also inside there is a smaller structure called nucleolus, and the space between nucleolus and nuclear envelope is filled with chromatin. We start from the nuclear envelope. The nuclear envelope is a double membrane with pores, and it regulates transport of molecules into the cell, into the nucleus, and out of the nucleus. Next one, nucleoli. Nucleolus, that's single, and nucleoli would be plural. So nucleolus is sitting in the center of the nucleus, and it is involved in RNA synthesis and also assembling of ribosomes. That's a function. And finally we have chromatin. What is that chromatin that is sitting all over the nucleus? Those are our DNA molecules. So that is a DNA chain, and to organize it, to prevent it from tangling, it's wrapped around special proteins called histones. Then that chain of histones also is turned into the spiral one time, and that spiral is turned into another spiral, and that is what is called chromatin. And only right before that cell is going to divide, all the chromatin inside of the cell is organized in chromosomes. Can you remember how chromosomes we have in each of our regular cells, not sex cells? The correct answer will be 46 or 23 pairs of chromosomes. Now let's remember shortly protein synthesis. So nucleus is responsible for beginning of protein synthesis. It has DNA, and DNA is a recorded information about how to make proteins. So DNA has that information, and the first step of protein production would be transcription. Information from DNA molecule is recorded to the messenger RNA. Messenger RNA later exits the nucleus through the nuclear pores, goes to the cytoplasm, and finds a ribosome. So that's where a translation happens. That is a messenger RNA, that is a ribosome. Ribosome is kind of reading information from messenger RNA and starts building a chain of amino acids, which is a future protein. It's a very simplistic explanation, but you were supposed to learn protein production, protein synthesis in your prerequisite class, General Bio. You're also supposed to know the cell cycle. Cell cycle, it's all the time from the time when the cell was born till the moment when cell either dies or divides usually. So when one cell divides and produces two daughter cells, that's where the cell cycle starts. Right here, the cell G1 phase, the cell is growing and building organelles. Then the second stage, S, that's when that cell does its job, whatever it's doing for our body. It contracts if it is a muscle cell, or it produces some substances if it's a gland cell. Then it starts preparing to division. That's G2 stage. And finally, it goes into mitosis, or process of the cell division. Mitosis actually is a division of genetic material, DNA, inside of the cell, and formation of 2 new nuclei. And when the cytoplasm with all the organelles divides, that is called cytokinesis. That is a process of mitosis in all the details. For this class, you don't need to know all the details of cell division, but I highly recommend you to read through this slide and remember what you learned in your general bio class about the phases of mitosis. Also remember, every time when we are discussing any process, you need to read it in the book.